Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney stands by Tyler Shandro after Shandro resigns as our province's health minister. There's some talk about a potential early leadership review for Premier Kenney. Our legislative reporter Tyler Dawson has the details. And it's McHappy Day across Canada, a chance to enjoy a burger while supporting various great causes.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney responded to his Tuesday cabinet shuffle in which Tyler Shandro was moved out as our province's health minister. Kenney says even though Shandro resigned as health minister, he still stands by him.
Tyler's dedication to the job and to serving the people of Alberta has never been in question. He's one of the hardest working people I've ever known, and he has brought his heart to his job. For example, by working hard to expand insurance coverage for very expensive medications for rare childhood diseases. However, as this crisis evolves, so too must our response to it. And so I have accepted Minister Shandro's resignation as Minister of Health. It is time for a fresh start and a new set of eyes on the largest department in the government, especially at a time such as this.
Jason Copping is now the new Alberta Health Minister, while Tyler Shandro takes over Copping's old portfolio as Minister of Labour and Immigration. Alberta's new Health Minister, Jason Copping, says he's committed to steering our province through this current crisis and, quote, on to better days.
We obviously have immediate and significant pressures on our healthcare system right now, and I step into this role resolutely committed to building immediate capacity. However, we also know that COVID-19 is not likely to go anywhere anytime soon. But today I would like a commitment to look forward. I'll be working on 3 key issues to shift how we manage COVID-19. First, increasing our baseline hospital capacity permanently. Second, educating vaccine-hesitant Albertans to get more Albertans immunized. And third, preparing our health system to more adequately respond to potential future waves of COVID-19.
Tyler Dawson is our legislative reporter and the Alberta correspondent with the National Post. Tyler, let's talk about this mini cabinet shuffle with the UCP. Even though Premier Kenney says Shandro resigned as health minister, was this more of a case that he needed to move on?
Obviously, the government is at a point where they are sort of snowed in with criticism, whether that's from progressives on the outside of the party and people within the party, some on the sort of pro-public health measure side, some on the side that think the government's gone too far. And Tyler Shandro obviously has largely been part of the public face of this government. And so he's been the person taking some of the criticism from the outside and internally. So, there's a little bit of an attempt, I think, to put a new face in, to get a fresh start, as the Premier said, on this file. So there's that. There's also the other side of it, which is that this has been a brutal 2 years for Tyler Shandro, and the Premier alluded to that on Tuesday evening when he spoke about it. And, when you look back to the incident in the summer when his family was chased by protesters, you have to imagine that it's taking something of a personal toll on Tyler Shandro as well. So I think almost certainly there's a couple factors here at play, both the political and sort of the personal, where Shandro might have been looking for a change.
Now, will moving Jason Copping into the health minister portfolio help the government save face and maybe rebuild trust with Albertans?
Well, I don't know if it will help rebuild trust with Albertans. What it might help is one of the longer term priorities with the government, which is the negotiations with healthcare workers. Tyler Shandro built up a lot of animosity on that file while he was health minister, and bringing in Jason Copping is, a new person at the table. That might be something that could help reset that relationship. And then, the other thing I think is sort of, any politician who's in one role for a considerable period of time, I think tends to fall into a bit of a routine, whether that's talking points, whether that's the way they interact with reporters, the way they are perceived by the public. And this can be for good or for ill, I think. So in that sense, bringing in a new person might be a little bit of a reset on the relationship the public and reporters have with the health minister. Is that going to, dramatically change the government's policy, the government's approach to the pandemic, or any of the other issues it's facing? I expect not. But just to have a new face in there, who doesn't have the baggage perhaps that Tyler Shandro had, I mean, it can't hurt, I guess, is what I'm saying at the end of the day.
Was there no one in the cabinet who came from a medical background whom Kenny could have considered as health minister, like maybe a former doctor or a nurse?
It's a bit of a strange thing. I mean, you look at the federal Liberals and have Patty Hajdu, who I believe has a medical background, and so you would think maybe out of the 60 or so people in caucus, there would be someone who had a medical background, and I don't think there is. Lots of business people, lots of lawyers, things like that, but it doesn't actually look like there's anyone with a medical background or a public health background. So, it is probably, arguably, a bit of a skills gap in the bench strength of the United Conservatives right now.
Now, there appears to be a little bit of division growing within the United Conservative Party caucus. Some are feeling a leadership review could be on the way for Premier Kenny. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's sort of two things happening here. The first is the internal caucus dispute, and that's been going on for a long time, but it seems to have intensified lately. Throughout the pandemic, there's been a handful of people who have been, vocal opponents of the government's agenda on handling the pandemic. Drew Barnes was one of these people until he was ejected from caucus. So there's that side of it. On the internal side as well, there's the people who say that the government hasn't done enough, hasn't moved fast enough. You've Richard Gottfried from Calgary, who criticized the government last week in a Facebook post. You've Leela Ahir, who said on Tuesday that Kenny should have resigned. She told that to Don Braid, a colleague at the Calgary Herald. So you have that sort of going on internally. And whether or not those sides sort of come together to be, really mad at Kenny sort of remains to be seen. But the other thing that's going on here is this sort of grassroots level revolt. And so basically the party has an internal mechanism that will govern a leadership review. And it seems at this point like that's on track to happen at the United Conservative annual general meeting in March 2022. Now, what some of these grassroots constituency organizations, one member of the board itself of the United Conservative Party are saying is that this leadership review needs to be moved up. That could be moved up to the November convention that's being held. Perhaps there's another possibility of time. But so that's the other thing that's sort of going on. And that requires a certain number of constituency associations to get on board with that review to initiate the process.
Thanks so much, Tyler. That was Tyler Dawson, our legislative reporter and the Alberta correspondent, joining us from Edmonton. A member of the Conservative Party's National Council thinks there should be a review of Erin O'Toole's leadership following his party's election defeat. Bert Chen began the online petition asking the council to convene a referendum on O'Toole's leadership before a scheduled one in 2023. He says many Conservatives are not happy with the direction O'Toole has taken the party. O'Toole campaigned for the leadership as a true blue Conservative, but has since changed his tune on issues such as a carbon tax to protecting the conscience rights of doctors. Federal Conservative leader Erin O'Toole says his party has begun looking into what went wrong in its election campaign. The Tories failed to pick up seats around Toronto, Metro Vancouver, and Quebec.
We're all disappointed by the results, and as leader, no one more than me. I'm in the process of trying to make sure we're reaching out to more and more Canadians. And in some parts of the country, we did that for the first time in a decade, having representation in Newfoundland and Labrador. In other areas, we fell short where we needed to be. And I'm disappointed because in a pandemic election where there's uncertainty about our future, I think we deserve better than Mr. Trudeau, who put his own interests ahead of the well-being of the country. But we have to acknowledge we have more work to do, and I'm going to work extremely hard with our team to win that trust, to make sure we can see a Conservative government getting this country back on track in an election that Mr. Trudeau's already threatened could be 18 months away.
Well, we are 3 days into the restriction exemption program here in Alberta, and so far the message from restaurant owners in Lethbridge has been positive. For business owners using the new exemption program, customers need to show proof of vaccination upon entry. The general manager of Hudson's Tap House in our city, Jesse Dixon, says so far customers have been fairly accommodating.
Overall, the response has been positive. Nobody's come in with a negative attitude about it. The one thing we weren't clear on was if we could use our outdoor space. So we have had a little bit confusion about that because we were under the impression we could, but because we're part of the restriction exemption program, we cannot use any of our dining space, indoor or outdoor, for unvaccinated or without proof of negative tests.
The province says along with the vaccine passport, you'll need to be required to show a piece of government ID when entering any establishment. Now, there's apparently a bit of confusion when it comes to the province's new restrictions exemption program. That's according to Annie Dormuth, who's the Director of Provincial Affairs with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. She shared with BCN's Jeanette Rocher that rushing this through is what caused a lot of confusion for business owners and patrons alike.
Most provinces that have gone through this at least provided business owners a week notice, provided guidance to business owners within a week of it being imposed on them. Whereas here in the province, of course, as we all know, the announcement came late Wednesday. And if you can believe it, the public health orders and guidance to business owners were made available online at Saturday evening around 8:00 p.m. So that really gave business owners a day notice to prepare. As well, they also made the last minute decision over the weekend to exclude all retail from being able to access the restriction exemption program, which meant that retail across the province is now restricted at 1/3 capacity.
It was McHappy Day at McDonald's restaurants across the country. The event raises money annually for the Ronald McDonald House Charities. As Micah Quinn explains now, organizations within Southern Alberta got in on the action as well.
Some live tunes from Casey Hellowell of Bow City Underground entertained the crowd at the Coaldale McDonald's in support of McHappy Day.
Big Brothers Big Sisters is here today as the recipient for McHappy Day fundraiser in Coaldale. So 75% of the proceeds for McHappy Day is going directly to Big Brothers Big Sisters for funding of our mentoring programs in Coaldale itself, with 25% of the fundraising going to Ronald McDonald House.
The event featured carnival games and prizes for kids, and volunteers came out from Coaldale Town Council and other organizations within Southern Alberta.
I mean, it's been a long time since we've been able to do anything as like a community, so being able to support a fundraiser such as this to help kids and families who've been struggling this past 2 years, whatever it's been, that the pandemic has been happening, and so it's really important. And honestly, it's lovely to be able to see everybody and connect with them in a safe way.
Victim Services, which operates within the Coaldale RCMP building, were also at the McHappy Day event to share what they do to help out in the community.
And we work along with the RCMP in times of crime or tragedy, and we basically help our victims doing anything from an impact statement to in court, standing on the stand. We also do a lot of referrals within the community, like counseling.
Since 1977, McHappy Day has raised close to $66 million for Ronald McDonald Houses and other local Canadian charities. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
A citywide dinner party is set to take place this weekend. Feed Lethbridge raised over $25,000 last year, and both food banks are expected to generate even more funds for this year's event. Community members are asked to host dinner parties for friends and families at their own locations to generate money for the initiative.
The funds raised are going to support emergency food programs, kitchen programs, garden programs, school lunch programs, and our food share programs, basically to help put food on the table for local citizens.
It helps directly to the programming that both food banks do, so that be that Mindful Munchies at our food bank, the kitchen at theirs, whatever food process we're doing, all the funds go directly to that. We are doing an auction plus a take-home dinner, so you can either have a heated meal delivered to you or meal kits. And then on top of that, we have the auction, which has a dessert auction portion, where if you win your dessert auction, we drive it out to you so that we can meet you at your house party and deliver those great desserts, as well as an open auction that has things like a surfboard and different other fun items. And then on top of that, we also have our raffle, which we have 3 different raffles this year. We have a 50-50 raffle, a liquor basket raffle, and then a getaway trip to Kimberley raffle.
The funds will go directly to each food bank, and the event will run from 6 till 9 p.m. on September the 23rd. September 22nd marks the day that Treaty 7 was signed. The agreement, which was penned in 1887, was between the Crown and 5 bands here in Southern Alberta. Lethbridge is situated on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains. In recognition of the day, Tourism Lethbridge hosted an event to honor the signing. It consisted of an elder prayer, a teepee walkthrough, and a round dance.
We're recognizing that Tourism Lethbridge is starting to work with the territory here that we're situated on. It's Treaty 7 territory. And we also wanted to recognize that on this day in 1877, a treaty was signed. And in most people's minds, it's an indication of how we continue or should continue to work together cohesively, reside on the land and take care of it. And so this is for us a way to create that awareness for the residents in Lethbridge, to show off our artists, and their beadwork, their dresses, their skirts, all of that.
We are setting up, in the next 3 weeks, we'll be setting up an Indigenous Advisory Committee to help us with all our marketing plans going forward. I think it's very important to have that voice at the table, to have that skin in the game so that we do build the Indigenous tourism sector here in the region.
The signing of Treaty 7 falls on the same week that the City of Lethbridge is honoring truth and reconciliation. A two-term Medicine City Councillor has died. The city released a statement that Jim Turner has passed away. Turner, who was in his 60s, served on Medicine Hat City Council since 2013 and was seeking his third term in the upcoming municipal election. Turner also sat on a number of boards for the Chamber, the Cypress View Foundation, and Economic Development Alliance. He also spent time as the executive director of the Medicine Hat Food Bank. Flags are flying at half-mast at all city facilities in honor of Medicine Hat councillor Jim Turner. There are close to 30 candidates vying to become Calgary's next mayor, but a recent poll suggests there are two frontrunners. The Think HQ Public Affairs poll shows Jeremy Farkas and Jyoti Gondek are well ahead of the pack when it comes to voter support. The survey shows 30% of voters intend to vote for Farkas, while 25% plan to vote for Gondek. Another 28% of voters remain undecided. City councillors in Winnipeg may soon have to be vaccinated against COVID-19. The city's Executive Policy Committee passed a motion to adopt a vaccine policy that includes elected officials and members of their staff. The city was working on a policy for frontline workers, but it did not include councillors or political staff. The motion calls for them to be fully vaccinated by November the 15th. Foreign Affairs and Human Rights organizers were joined by Afghan women urging the international community to not abandon the achievements of 20 years of international engagement in Afghanistan. They're calling for the world to help protect Afghan women's rights.
The international community must spare no efforts to safeguard women's rights, safety, and well-being. Afghan women and girls, as all Afghans, deserves to live in safety, security, and dignity to fully enjoy the rights to education, work, freedom of movement, and expression.
We are deeply worried that many girls may not be allowed back into school. Girls cannot and must not be left behind. It is critical that all girls, including older girls, are able to resume their education without any further delays.
Our Foreign Affairs expert Lisa Daftari says the international community really needs to rally, come together, and fight for women in Afghanistan who are being told to stay home. Women who are doctors and lawyers. She says the Taliban is suppressing women in Afghanistan and their voices should not be silenced.
This is horrific. This is the year 2021, and you hear nothing out of women's groups and people who are taking to the streets for women's marches in favor of women's rights and women's lib. What happened to these voices? Crickets. That's all you hear. When we're hearing the way in which these women are being repressed and being told to stay home from their jobs, from the universities, being told that they have to live completely differently, to dress completely differently, and there's no reaction from the rest of the world.
Catch the full interview with our Foreign Affairs expert Lisa Daftari coming up in the second half of our program. Well, we had another gorgeous day here in southwestern Alberta, lots of sunshine and not much rain. That trend will continue for the rest of the week and into the weekend. Full weather details are coming up. We enjoyed another beautiful day in Lethbridge as we got over 20 degrees once again. Jeanette Rocher is back with a complete look at our weather forecast. Jeanette, the above seasonal temperatures should continue for quite some time.
Yeah, that's true. Any consistent signs of cold seem to be really delayed right now in Alberta. By this weekend, we're looking at more summer-like conditions. Not a bad way to start out fall, definitely. By the way, today, officially the first day of fall. The autumn equinox began at exactly 1:20 p.m. So fall is now underway. And look at these temperatures. You wouldn't even know it. 19 tomorrow, that's going to be the chilliest day for the whole week. Not bad at all, though. Friday, lots of sunshine, 24 the high. As we get into Saturday, we're climbing up to 27 degrees under sunny skies. Sunshine continuing into Sunday, 24 the high. Temperature for Monday, a lovely 26 degrees and 21 on Tuesday. So certainly higher than the average high for this time of year. Average high, of course, 19 degrees. We are seeing more like summer-like conditions for sure. Average low for this time of year, 4 degrees. 31 was where we were at back in 1994. And in 2000, we were sitting at -5, very chilly. 7:18 is when the sun rose this morning, and our sun set this evening on the first evening of fall is at 7:30, so giving us just a little more than 12 hours of daylight. There you go. So over on the West Coast, we're looking at a mix of sun and clouds, 16 the high in Victoria, 19 in Vancouver. Looking over to Edmonton, we're seeing sunny skies, 15 degrees the high, 16 the high in Calgary with a mix of sun and cloud, looking at about 20 to 40 kilometer per hour winds there. As we look to the rest of the prairies, let's take a look at that. Saskatoon, we're seeing a chance of showers, 16 the high, 20 the high in Regina. With rains now, lots of wind gusts as well, 20, 40 to 60 wind gusts in Regina. Same thing for Winnipeg. Winnipeg could see wind gusts up to 60 kilometers per hour. A nice even temperature at 24 though, with a mix of sun and cloud. Now there is a heavy rainfall warning still in effect for both Toronto and Ottawa. Toronto still heavy rains tomorrow. Ottawa could see another 10 to 15 millimeters tomorrow as well, with a chance of a thunderstorm. Montreal sitting at a lovely 28 degrees, very humid there as well, with a mix of sun and cloud. As we look to the East Coast, 25 the high for Fredericton, 24 for Halifax. Beautiful sunny day in Charlottetown tomorrow, 23 the high, and a beautiful 22 in St. John's, Newfoundland, with lots of sunshine. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
The Liberal government is being urged to refocus on helping small and medium-sized businesses emerge from the fourth wave of the pandemic now that the election is over. Restaurants Canada CEO Todd Barclay says he hopes the transition period will happen quickly since not much changed politically. Canadian Chamber of Commerce President Perrin Beatty is calling on all parties to set aside their differences and to focus on problems many business owners are facing. A number of business groups are calling for targeted support for hard-hit industries like travel, tourism, and hospitality. Barclay is also calling for expanded immigration programs to help the restaurant industry with an ongoing labor shortage made worse by COVID-19. Two more provinces, Ontario and New Brunswick, rolled out their versions of a vaccine passport on Wednesday. Patrons at Ontario's dine-in restaurants, nightclubs, gyms, and sports facilities need to present a full vaccination against COVID-19 along with government-issued identification in order to be allowed inside. There are potential fines for business owners who do not comply with the checks and for customers who give false information. People in New Brunswick must also now show proof of full vaccination to access certain businesses, events, and services. Masks are also mandatory for all indoor public spaces. Ford is investing $50 million in an upstart electric vehicle battery recycling company. The automaker says it wants to shore up its U.S. battery supply chain. The Michigan-based automaker will invest in Redwood Materials, a Nevada-based company founded by former Tesla executive J.B. Straubel. Ford says Redwood can recover around 95% of precious metals in EV batteries such as nickel, cobalt, lithium, and copper. The automaker says locally produced anode and cathode materials can drive down battery costs, increase supply, and cut reliance on imports. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling out billionaires for joyriding into space while millions of people go hungry. In July, billionaires Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos flew into space, just missing orbit, on spaceships their companies built. Billionaire Jared Isaacman and 3 others returned from 3 days in orbit on Saturday. But unlike Branson and Bezos, Isaacman used his flight to help raise $200 million for a children's cancer hospital. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 157 points on the day to finish at 20,401. The Dow was up 338 to 34,258. The S&P 500 was up 41 points to 4396. And the Nasdaq was up 150 points on the day to 14,897. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.74 to $72.23 US per barrel. Natural gas was even at $4.81 US. Gold was also even at $17.68.17 US an ounce, and silver was even at $22.69 US an ounce. Wheat is at $11.26 per bushel, barley's at $8.92, canola's at $19.60, and corn is at $10.92 per bushel. Live cattle were up 83 cents to $123.28. Feeder cattle were up $1.05 to $157.68. And lean hogs were down 53 cents to $83.85. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 78.30 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, a member of the Conservative Party's National Council thinks there should be a review of Aaron O'Toole's leadership following his party's election defeat. Bert Chen began the online petition asking the council to convene a referendum on O'Toole's leadership before a scheduled one in 2023. He says many Conservatives are not happy with the direction O'Toole has taken the party. The Taliban is going door to door in Afghanistan looking for North Americans who are in hiding. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will have more details for us in just a moment. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. Lethbridge's Sport Council's Outdoor Roving Gyms program is taking place Wednesdays at Henderson Lake Park and Thursdays behind the Nicholas Sharon Arena from 10 to 11 a.m. This program is for kids ages 5 and under and their caregivers. Come and enjoy an hour of fun and get active. Pre-registration is required and space is limited. For details and to register, visit lethbridgesportcouncil.ca/rovinggyms. Get out and explore nature. The Helen Schuler Nature Center is offering guided 1-hour field trips for all ages. Visit lethbridge.ca/things to do. Click on Nature Center and follow the events page, where you'll find a list of featured tours that will introduce you to amazing plants and animals found right here in Lethbridge. Cost is $35. Book online for your tour today. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
The U.S. flew Haitians who were camped at a Texas border town back to Haiti recently and then tried blocking others from crossing the border from Mexico. To discuss this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, joining us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, this may be the largest expulsion of migrants or refugees in your country in decades.
Yeah, it's not a pretty sight down there. I don't know if you've seen some of the footage under the bridge that everyone talks about this bridge being the symbol of these crowds gathered. I mean, what's going to happen to them? But it's been going on for a while now, and it's been ignored by the media because we have a different president in the White House right now. It's difficult to cover this, to say that they're not doing a good job with immigration when you have a Democrat administration that promises asylum and it promises, this is, give us your hungry and you're poor and all of that. But when it comes down to practice and to logic, it's very difficult to absorb the numbers that are coming in. And talk about, vetting and talk about vaccine, evidence and proof of vaccinations and COVID testing. I mean, it's more difficult to get a child into preschool these days without, 7 different COVID tests and proof of vaccination by the parents and all that. So, it raises a lot of questions. I know that the Biden administration will be dealing with this for a very long time, but right now they're fixated on the Haitian crisis, the overflow into Texas by this one group. They've also been trying to get other groups from South America back over the border, but that's been much more difficult. With the Haitians, they're getting them on flights and getting them out very quickly. There has never been in the history of U.S. immigration this quick of, taking them out this quickly. I think they waited so long that it needed immediate attention and an immediate solution, so to speak. Not that this is anything of a solution. This is a Band-Aid on, Niagara Falls. So it's going to be a long time coming, and they'll have to have a more cohesive and, uniform message coming out of the White House. You can't tell one group they can't come in and another group that they can come in. What will be the policy, and what will be, the social distancing policy, and what will be the vetting policy with regards to extremists? Are they coming in from Afghanistan and Syria? Are they coming in from Hezbollah in Venezuela? Who's coming in, and what are they bringing into the country? Is it COVID? Is it worse? Is it drugs, the narcotics? All of that. So a lot of questions being raised, and it's a big issue.
So a portion of the U.S.-Mexican border has also been closed off where many of the migrants have been crossing. Lisa, now we're talking about tens of thousands of people here. Del Rio's mayor says more than 14,500 immigrants were living under that bridge that you mentioned and even bathing in a river nearby.
this is, I mean, this is the reality. I mean, these are people's backyards and homes, and this is just one portion of the border. By the way, Hal, we're speaking of obviously very popular routes that the migrants are taking, but there are many other. We have a porous border, and this is what Donald Trump was talking about firming up this border for many reasons, not because we're heartless, but because of the safety and security of those already living here. The fact that we can't vet the numbers coming in are astronomical. We hit record highs every month this year to date with the number of migrants crossing over. And again, they're coming in from all over. We know that there have been nefarious elements that have crossed over. We're talking about terrorist elements. We're talking about narcotics. We're talking about obviously COVID and other things. So, it's not going to get any easier. And the pictures of these 14,000 or more living under the bridge. I mean, come to Los Angeles any day of the week, and I'll show you similar, tents on sidewalks in the nicest parts of town, and nothing's being done about it. It's only getting worse. And this is again the sign of blue states, the sign of blue administrations. Our governor feels the same way. He's inviting the homeless from other places to come to live here. And, the American taxpayer and the American voter, some of them are getting it and some of them are not. But, this is no way for the migrants, for those who have the bleeding hearts for these migrants or for the homeless, this is no way for them to live in these poor conditions. So this is not the solution by any means. And it's only going to get worse because of the policies that they're enforcing.
Is it also a housing affordability issue as opposed to just migrants coming in, living in these tent cities?
Both. We have a lot. We have obviously there's mental health. There is, housing issue that's been talked about. But, the city does offer here in Los Angeles, as an example, they do offer many solutions from, clinics and hotels that are taken over for homeless people. And they have, veterans, just services for veterans that could be much better, of course. But, mental health is another huge issue. We just had another death, a murder, I should say, in the tents that are very nearby where I live. All they do is remove that tent, remove the body, and they just go back to living as usual. The police don't want to deal with it, of course. As you know, we have a very, anti-police culture here as well. So the police don't want to deal with it. They don't want to look like the bad guys. And again, there's no policy to remove anyone. It's just getting worse, and it's really it's not a sanitary situation for anyone living there or living nearby. These are very expensive areas where we have taxpayers paying taxes to have this filth and needles where children play in parks and such. So again, it's getting worse and worse, and I think that we have to have a better overall policy against or in favor of a better policy, I should say, for both immigration and for homelessness.
Lisa, Afghanistan's new Taliban rulers have allegedly closed the government's Ministry of Women's Affairs and replaced it with a ministry aimed at promoting morality and averting wrongdoing. Women's rights taking another big hit in Afghanistan.
Huge. I mean, nothing surprising, right, Hal? But this is a specific issue where they had actually a ministry for women's affairs, and it's a symbolic move to remove that and to stop any organization that is in favor of women's rights, and to replace it with morality police. Basically, that's when they pull over women for showing their toes in their sandals or wearing nail polish or being out with a male who may not be her husband, or may be out at a doctor's appointment or taking their children to school without a male escort. This is what the morality police is all about, and you can see this in places where Sharia law is enforced. For those who believed that the Taliban are going to be more moderate, more reformed, particularly regarding women, I have a bridge to sell you, because these examples show much more clearly what the Taliban is all about and how they will treat women under their rule.
And there's a recent report out of Afghanistan saying that female employees in the Kabul city government have been told to stay home, and work is only allowed for those who cannot be replaced by men.
Yes, imagine, right? So, imagine the number of educated women who, for the past 2 decades, have studied and worked their way up the corporate ladder and other ladders in Afghanistan, only to be told that they have to stay home because now there's a new sheriff in town. If their job can't be replaced by a man, then they can work, but that doesn't really include many vocations. But again, this is horrific. This is the year 2021, and you hear nothing out of women's groups and people who are taking to the streets for women's marches in favor of women's rights and women's lib. What happened to these voices? Crickets. That's all you hear. When we're hearing the way in which these women are being repressed and being told to stay home from their jobs, from the universities, being told that they have to live completely differently, to dress completely differently, and there's no reaction from the rest of the world.
Well, it's understandable why there have been a lot of evacuations out of Afghanistan. And Lisa, those evacuations continue. In fact, the largest evacuation flight under the Taliban left Kabul for Qatar. Tell me more about that.
Yes, this is a picture to be told because it's one of probably the last, but a very significant evacuation flight out of Afghanistan into Qatar. Qatar, as you know, has been a mediator of sorts, inserting itself into the equation on the ground in Afghanistan to say that we're going to kind of do all the housekeeping here to make things more stable. Can Qatar be trusted? Probably not. They have supported terrorism and nefarious elements in the Middle East in the past. They are known as the piggy banks of the terror organizations. And of course, they have swooped in to normalize relations and continue a friendship with the Taliban, just like they have with many other terrorist groups like the Taliban. And here we have, an evacuation flight. What I said about the Muslim Brotherhood, I'll say about the Taliban. And Qatar is the same, cut from the same cloth, where they come in and they help out and they set up soup kitchens and schools and they do things for the people. And that's how they gain the trust and the support of a segment of the population. And that's exactly what the Taliban's doing. And Qatar wants to insert itself so it does have a seat at the table when it comes to the terror headquarters that will be built in Afghanistan under the Taliban. And of course, again, Qatar will have a front row seat at that table.
Now, many in Afghanistan, including a number of Americans, are in hiding as the Taliban going door to door looking for Americans and a lot of people who oppose them.
Yes, we're told that there are no Americans that are left stranded. The White House doesn't like that word stranded, but that's exactly what they are. When we're having reports of Americans in hiding because they know that their life is in jeopardy if they are found and exposed by the Taliban, then they are in danger and they are vulnerable to the Taliban and the situation. So we are told that there are still a number of Americans, and not only Americans, but allies and Afghanis who are in hiding because those people have helped or have been in cahoots with or did research or translating or did some sort of work for the Americans or the allies and now are also in hiding. So we think about the Afghan people as well. And these are the stories that have to be told because we know that the reality on the ground is not just, peachy keen. We know that these people are in hiding because the Taliban is brutal. They're going door to door and they're hoping to find these people and to make examples out of them.
French President Emmanuel Macron will be chatting with your president, Joe Biden, over a crisis involving submarines. Can you explain?
Mm-hmm. Yes, the French feel very snubbed by President Biden and the United States, of course. Australia and the United States, with the UK, just struck a deal for submarines, and the French feel snubbed. They weren't part of the conversation. They weren't part of the deal. And now the backstory is why they really feel snubbed is because they previously had a deal with Australia to make their submarines, and the Australians were like, we're going to move on to a different partner. And now the Australians are defending themselves against the French because the French are very, very upset and they're making the world know how upset they are. But we know that Macron will have a conversation with Joe Biden. He's not going to let this one go, and he's going to make his disenchantment known to the president.
You don't think they'd ask for the Statue of Liberty back, would they?
Oh, we hope not. That's going to cut out a lot of tourism for the New York, New Jersey area.
Now, recent satellite images are showing that North Korea is expanding its weapons-grade uranium plant. How concerned should we be here in North America?
You know, we're not looking at all the places, all the hotspots, all the rogue elements that have increasingly become more brazen in the past less than a year. Look, we talk about foreign policy and the fact that when there is a weaker leader in the White House, it creates more chaos around the world. It creates disorder. You know, we saw this debacle in Afghanistan, but we also are not looking at the other places in the world where things are getting much worse. For example, North Korea, where they are chest thumping and doing more tests, and they are announcing the enrichment of uranium again. The Iranian regime, likewise, is saying, well, we're not getting back into an Iran nuclear deal. We're not getting back into a deal with the allies or the United States. So we might as well continue. We're not going to let in inspectors, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. We're going to enrich uranium up to 60%. And China is another great example of another rogue nation getting more and more brazen. And they know that they can stand up to the United States because there will be no penalty, no consequence for it. Our foreign policy is not going to change. If anything, it's going to become more lenient in a sentiment to appease and to make friends in a different way, to use quote unquote diplomacy, which never works with these rogue elements. But yes, we should keep our eyes on these stories, particularly North Korea, which we don't know much about. There is no transparency. There is no media coverage. There's nothing we know about North Korea other than the satellite images and what we are able to ascertain from them.
Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari joining us once again from Los Angeles. Thanks so much, Lisa.
My pleasure.
Municipal elections will be taking place across Alberta on October 18th. And today we have the opportunity to speak with one of our Lethbridge mayoral candidates. She's no stranger to City Hall as she was a two-term city councillor. Bridget Mearns, welcome to Bridge City News. So great to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So first of all, Bridget, can you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, why you decided to run for mayor's office? This, of course, is your second time running for mayor, actually. You ran back in 2013 against Chris Bierman. So it's obviously something you're very passionate about.
You know, I think you opened that really well. Public service is something that is core to who I am. Those are the values that I hold. I knew when I left City Council in 2017 that I might come back someday, and this just felt like the right opportunity. I'd been meeting with a number of people who encouraged me to run. I listened to what they had to say. I recognized that I shared the same vision for our city that they did. And so I sat with my family and I spoke with my network and was encouraged to go for it. And I'm pleased to do that.
That sounds great. Now, Bridget, you're currently the executive director, right, of BUILD, so Building Industry and Land Development Association.
The executive officer.
Executive officer. Okay. So if you were voted in as mayor, what would happen to the BUILD organization? Would you still have your hands in that?
No, that would be something I would absolutely step away from. So I would resign from this position and they'd replace me.
Okay. Talk about your position there a little bit, what you've been up to the past number of years.
Oh goodness! Wow, that's a big one. Well, it's a membership association, like you said, for land developers and home builders. But our focus has been over the last couple of years is a real focus on affordability. So looking at ways how development is done in the municipality, but also advocating at provincial and federal levels around mortgage stress tests, 30-year amortization. Locally, we've been looking at the land use bylaw. We've spent a significant amount of time with the municipal development plan. We've consulted on the municipal housing strategy. Those are just off the top of my head. We have a very close relationship, and our focus really is to make the land industry vibrant because it is one of the largest employers in our city. But it's also important to our citizens to have great housing choices and neighborhoods.
Yeah. Okay, so getting back to the election here. So Bridget, you say that you want to build bridges across the issues that divide us. So certainly one of the most divisive issues in our city has been the debate over the now closed supervised consumption site. So do you believe that another SCS would be helpful to our city, or are other solutions a better option?
So this is one of the issues that sprung me into action and why I wanted to run for mayor. This is an issue that divided our city, and it divided our city council. It became a wedge issue. We do have an overdose prevention site at the shelter. They are looking to rezone and bring that inside to the building so that it has the proper supports around it. The issue became about whether or not harm reduction is a proper method of dealing with addiction, when we should have been talking about it globally. We should have been talking about the issues that are affecting homelessness and addiction, talking about the support services that happen around a harm reduction. So it really isn't either or, even though that's where the discussion was stuck. This is about making sure that we have a plan to deal with all of the issues that are affecting the drug crisis and the homelessness issues that we're seeing in the city.
So if the province and the city decided to go ahead with a new supervised consumption site or perhaps a dry site, similar to, say, the mustard seed proposal, do you think that there are some potential places in our city where this could work?
I absolutely believe there are places in the city for this to work. Looking at things like this long term, we can look at how development is affected using the land use bylaw in new developments and ensuring that we've got the social infrastructure already in new developments moving forward. But we always run up against the issue of NIMBYism. But I absolutely am convinced that this is something that we can solve together as a community and experts. This isn't an issue that's unique to Lethbridge. This is happening around North America. There are great examples in other municipalities where they're dealing and have had some success in this area. I turn to the Calgary Drop-In Center that have both dry and wet floors. They have day services. They have laundry for services and shower opportunities. So there really is an ability to bring some dignity to those who are suffering with these challenges. And we can do that together in a way that's meaningful and deal with an issue to bring us forward into something better.
Now, Bridget, you are no stranger to City Council. So in your opinion, what needs to change at Lethbridge City Council in order to bring about less division?
So just to clarify, it's absolutely healthy for city councilors to have differing opinions. They're elected representatives and they represent our community. Our community isn't always agreeing on the same thing, so neither should your city council. What needs to happen, though, is having the leadership where it is understood as a foundational basis that there is a respect for everybody who's in that city council chamber, the equally representing and elected to be there. So being able to create that foundation, creating a forum where healthy and respectful debate can happen, but then a decision is made, and that becomes unified vision and direction of council, and that's up to the leader to happen. When you see that there's division, it's when decisions become undermined or you see these things become wedge issues. And if you see them there, you'll see them in our community.
Now, Lethbridge keeps scoring very poorly in the Crime Severity Index. Any thoughts on how you would go about reducing crime and making our city a safer place?
Yeah, so the Crime Severity Index, there's a couple of things to note about that. One probably most notable is that it doesn't include any municipalities that have police forces that are RCMP. It's only municipalities that have their own force. So when you add in those municipalities like Red Deer, we're actually 20th on the list. But to be clear, 20th is not great either. So it's really important that we continue to focus on those determinants of crime. So again, the homelessness, the drug crisis, making sure that people have the supports that they need in place, whether it's in recovery or transition or just day-to-day day supports. So addressing that, there's no one quick fix, there's no one solution, but focusing on what those determinants are will go a long way to seeing some success.
Now, Bridget, should our city get hit by another wave of COVID-19, how would you handle the situation for our city, keeping us safe while not hurting the economy?
Right. So this is obviously a very timely discussion with the province removing all of the public health measures. I've heard a lot of concern from employers, employees, parents, and it's legitimate concern. The fact of the matter is, to make decisions like this, you rely on the chief medical officer of our province, who relies on the best evidence they can. It is up to the provincial government to to do a health mandate. That being said, if there were to be a situation where we felt that the province was not following through on that mandate, and we were seeing some concerns here in our city, it would absolutely be up to mayor and council to have those discussions.
So would you reenact a mask mandate, for example?
Well, I think those are discussions that you'd have to have. I don't think having a hypothetical conversation around it is helpful. All of those things have to be determined based on the information that you have at the time.
Okay.
But the first and foremost responsibility would be to continue to advocate for the province to take on that responsibility.
Right. Now, Bridget, First Nations issues are very important to you. So what, practically speaking, needs to happen to achieve reconciliation in our city?
I think there's been some really great work done on this front. Lethbridge, from what I understand, is in the forefront of other municipalities in dealing with this issue. Having Oki as our official greeting, having the Reconciliation Advisory Committee, having a presence of Indigenous peoples in our municipal development plan. There's lots of good stuff coming forward. It's important we continue with the truth, learning that, and then moving towards that reconciliation, remaining with close ties with our First Nations communities. I want to read you something because I was prepared for this question. And this is a clip out of the Truth and Reconciliation report. Reconciliation must create a more equitable, inclusive society by closing the gaps in health, social, and economic outcomes that exist between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Canadians. Right there is the perfect directive on where our city needs to continue to go.
Wow, thank you for that. Now, Bridget, there's quite a bit of ground to recover, obviously, when it comes to our local economy, with many businesses having to close or cut back due to the pandemic, unfortunately. So what's your plan to improve things for our local businesses and get people working again?
So first and foremost, we have to be listening, asking and listening our local businesses on how we can support them. But as a municipality, there are a number of ways that we can do that. Operationally, of course, so making sure that we're an efficiently run operation and they continue to see values for their tax dollars. But there's also things like investing in economic drivers in our community. Exhibition Park is a really great example of that. So not only does it create jobs during construction phase, but it will continue to create jobs as it opens and attracts businesses to our city. The third part of that is the reputation of our city. So making sure that we have the message of how incredible our city really is. And we're not focusing on what challenges us, but we're focusing on what makes us great. So those are our post-secondary institutions. Those are our wonderful parks and amenities. Those are our resilient and creative businesses. It's the compassion of our people. There's so much that we have to offer in our city, and that needs to be first and foremost in our messaging coming from the city.
Now, along the same vein is that you've been very active with tourism, Lethbridge, over the years. So how can we bring more tourism to the city?
So again, going back to the investment in exhibition, which you know I've been nurturing along for 9 years. And so it's great to see it funded. It's going to have a great impact for us. Continuing to invest in the support around it, like an airport, seeing those kind of things will be important. Tourism Lethbridge is a marketing organization, so making sure that it's properly funded so that we are getting the message out about how incredible our city is and supporting that new investment that we're making at Exhibition Park. All of that will continue to grow our tourism in our area. Really, we're a wonderful place, and it's just a matter of making sure everyone else knows it too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, inclusion is also an important issue to you. Can you maybe share what an inclusive city should look like in your view?
So that it's such a big thing to say inclusive, but really what it means is that everyone can equitably participate in the life here in Lethbridge. It's going to look different for each person and how they engage in that, but having that equitable ability or opportunity, so that means accessible, that means affordable, that means meeting people where they are and supporting them where they are. That's what an inclusive city looks like.
I know I threw a lot of questions at you, but what would you say to viewers in wrapping up why they should vote for you on October 18th?
Well, I know that we haven't had a whole lot of time here, and there's the questions that you've asked are really big ones, and I have a lot more to say about them, and I will over the next 2 months as we campaign, and I continue to meet with our citizens and business and families and parents and loved ones and friends. But at the end of the day, I'm bringing forward a vision I believe I share with the citizens of Lethbridge. And it is a vision where we build on our strengths and not focus on our challenges. We address our challenges 100%, but that's not where we live. We really are a hopeful city. We're a vibrant city. I bring the government experience. I bring the passion and the skills to drive. And I offer that to the citizens of Lethbridge to move us forward to building a brighter Lethbridge together. I offer the broad experience as an experienced public servant, but also as a business leader, as a community builder, and as a champion for Lethbridge. So I believe that I'm the best candidate, and I'm offering that choice to the citizens of Lethbridge on October 18th, and I'm hoping they'll take me up on it.
Well, thanks so much for being with us today, Bridget. Appreciate having you on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Bridget Mearns is one of the mayoral candidates here in Lethbridge. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.